The truth is that Catholic Charities operating on the U.S. side facilitate their housing, transportation. Border Patrol is under orders to take immigrants and that turn themselves over and release them into the interior within 48 hours.
Hey, Todd Bensman is going to be on the show. He is coming up at 14 past the hour. He's got a talk in Boston, in fact, coming up tomorrow night. I'll be sharing the details with you, but Todd is one of the foremost experts on the border crisis. He's a senior national security fellow for the Center for Immigration Studies. He's also the author of a book called Overrun, and we're going to talk about the border crisis and Catholic Charities and their involvement and the role in all of that.
By the way, my name is Joe McLean. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below.
But joining us right now is the Senior National Security Fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies, Todd Bensman. He's also the author of Overrun. Good morning to you, Todd. Thank you for your time today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're seen as one of the foremost experts on the border crisis situation right now, and it is pretty bad. But maybe you can just give us the elevator pitch here. Just how bad is the border crisis right now?
Well, it is the greatest mass migration crisis in U.S. history by far. Just judging from the numbers that the U.S. Customs and Border Protection publishes regularly on its website, it's been going on now for 3 years. We're well into the fourth year. In a typical year before this, we might get 400,000 apprehensions between ports of entry, maybe 500,000, rarely over that number for really decades. In the last 36 months, we have had about 10 million illegal immigrants cross the border one way or another, with about 5+ million of them living inside the United States now.
Wow.
These are numbers that we've never even barely touched ever in the history of the country. And definitely since we started keeping track of numbers in 1960, in the Eisenhower administration. So the number of people coming through right now is somewhere in the neighborhood of 6,000 and 7,000 every single day. So you can do the math for a month. We've been looking at a couple 100,000 for 3 years straight. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And all of these people that are allowed in anyway are making their way, obviously, to northern cities and towns, mid-size on up, small towns all across America. Everybody's feeling this, which is why it ranks as a apex political issue for the 2024 campaign. That's why you saw the president and Donald Trump go down at the same time. They had kind of a split-screen visit there.
A lot of American citizens are incredibly concerned about terrorists coming across that border in grave numbers. What is the concern over terrorists coming across that southern border?
That's right. Well, my current book about this border crisis, Overrun, it's actually my second book. My first book is called America's Covert Border War, which is all about the threat of jihadist infiltration and the counterterrorism programs that the country has implemented down there since 9/11. To date, in just the 36 months of this mass migration crisis, we have apprehended somewhere on the order of 350 immigrants who are already on the FBI's terrorism watch list. That's a historic number. We've never seen anything like that. Normally, in a typical year, it might be 10 who are on the FBI's terror watch list.
Wow.
Not hundreds like this, many dozens. Those are just the ones that we caught. Some might think that's a good news story. Well, we caught those. But at the same time, we've logged about 2 million immigrants from all over the world who are presumed to have gotten through and into the interior without being apprehended at all. So if 350 did get apprehended who were on the watch list, you have to assume that quite a few probably got through and they're wandering around the country right now. One last thing on that, the numbers that are coming to the border from countries other than Mexico and Central America are arriving in the highest percentages ever in the history of border security in the United States. Somewhere about 45% coming from 170 countries from around the world, including all of the countries of the Middle East, all of the Muslim majority countries are just pouring in over the border right now through Arizona. Very little vetting. The programs that I describe and reveal in America's Covert Border War are absolutely overwhelmed and no longer being used for the first time since 9/11. And in my mind, that substantially elevates the threat risk that something's going to happen one way or another at some point.
I want to turn the conversation now, Todd, to Catholic Charities. There is an outrage right now in our country, in the headlines, about Catholic Charities providing support, getting government funds to help funnel these people across our border illegally, many of which are criminals. And most recently was this case of the murder of Laken Riley at the hands of an illegal immigrant who had a record. What is the involvement? What is the story here with Catholic Charities?
Well, Catholic Charities, and not just Catholic Charities, but plenty of other charities that are interested in migration, resettlement, migrant resettlement, and mobility and movement related to the Catholic Church and also to all of the major religions. What's happening is that these nonprofits are on both sides of the border throughout the migration trails using State Department and USAID grants to facilitate the mass migration, to hand out cash debit cards and cash envelopes to hundreds of thousands on their way in, and also to provide food and shelter and something that they call humanitarian transportation across borders. Really all earthly needs of the migrants on the southern approaches to the border. And then once they get to the border and then over it, released promptly into the United States, the government has increasingly relied on these NGOs, especially Catholic Charities, probably one of the biggest operating on the U.S. side of the border, facilitate their housing, transportation from the border into interior cities like Boston, New York, all of them, really all of these, the Catholic Charities and many other, hundreds of other nonprofit organizations. It's literally an industry operating on huge government contracts, usually no-bid contracts that are just worth hundreds of millions of dollars, putting people up in hotels, really taking over whole hotels, finding shelter for them, transportation, food, pots, pans, housing, soup to nuts support for millions of foreign nationals that the government decided to allow into the country. And that's what's happening in Boston. I'll talk about that. I'll provide information about that. One thing that people are, I think, laboring, like kind of a false narrative that they're laboring under, is that Governor Greg Abbott of Texas is the one responsible for this because he's busing everybody to Boston and he's busing everybody to New York and Chicago. But that's just simply not true. Everybody who is arriving in these cities is arriving by choice. It's voluntary. The state of Texas might grant a fractional minority of them free bus rides as kind of a political theater thing, but the vast majority are they go there anyway, whether they get free bus fare from Texas or not. And hundreds of thousands are being flown in and are flying in directly from foreign airports into Logan, into JFK, into O'Hare, flying directly from foreign countries under a CBP-1 phone app that I'll be talking about too. So, and those are rarely acknowledged by these big cities as a source.
The Texas National Guard on the border, stopping migrants from coming across that border. Is that political theater? Are they actually securing the entire border? I'm told that there are spots that have nobody there to protect and they're wide open and people can still come across. Like, what is the truth there? Is this a good thing that we're seeing there? Is this political theater? What are we seeing in the headlines?
I mean, the truth is that Border Patrol is under orders to take immigrants that they apprehend and that turn themselves over. Most of them turn themselves over to Border Patrol and release them into the interior on their own recognizance within 24, 48 hours. So it's a constant turnstile. Border Patrol is not really anyone. They let almost everyone right into the country, somewhere in the order between 85% and 100% of everyone who crosses illegally is just turnstiled right into the country, handed over to Catholic Charities and other groups for transportation on this conveyor belt system into the American interior. Texas decided to try to block immigrants at the river's edge before they can get up the riverbank behind concertina wire in some of the busiest areas. But, Texas has a lot of border, 1,200 miles of border. They can't possibly cover all of it. And if there's Border Patrol anywhere nearby, they beckon the immigrants to go around the Texans, and then they'll bring them into the country. That's the dynamic.
Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.